AITA for leaving my girlfriend with her debts after she called her ex her soulmate? I am 26 years old, and, until very recently, I had been in a relationship for 2 years with Ava, who is now 23. I am not writing this to get sympathy or to paint myself as the hero of the story. Truly, the only thing I want is to recount what happened exactly as it occurred, without sugarcoating or exaggerating, with complete sincerity. It all went down on a Saturday afternoon, one of those days that feels like a carbon copy of the one before. It was December, and like almost every weekend, we had plans with friends. Nothing extraordinary, nothing different from our usual routine. It was the kind of pattern you repeat so often that you start to believe it is the same thing as stability, as if things couldn't possibly break out of sheer habit. That afternoon, we went to Adrian's house. He was almost always the host. He had a comfortable 2-bedroom apartment with a big sectional couch perfect for movie nights, and he genuinely enjoyed organizing get-togethers. The plan was simple: a Christmas movie marathon, some takeout, some drinks, and just hanging out together with no other goal than to enjoy the company. It had become a tradition we fell into almost without realizing it. The group consisted of Adrian, Madison, Jessica, Ava, and me. Initially, they were all Ava's friends. She knew them from before we started dating. However, over time, and quite naturally, they became my friends too. I never felt like the guest boyfriend who was just passing through. We shared inside jokes, secrets, and made plans that didn't depend on Ava being there. That's why, until that day, I truly felt like I was part of the group. We arrived as it was getting dark. Adrian had turned on some soft lamps that gave the living room a warm atmosphere. There were blankets folded on the couch and several pizza boxes on the coffee table. Everything felt relaxed and cozy. We dropped our coats in a corner, got settled, and sat down to start the first movie. For the first hour, nothing out of the ordinary happened. Random comments about the plot, an occasional laugh, someone getting up to grab another drink. It was exactly what you would expect from an afternoon like that. If someone had asked me in that moment if I was happy, I would have said yes, without a second thought. The dynamic shifted when the movie was no longer the center of attention. It was Madison who broke the spell. She put her phone down, placed it face down on the table, and said without any drama, but with clear exhaustion, that she was feeling down. She did not seem to be looking for attention. Rather, it felt like she just could not keep what she was feeling to herself anymore. She told us she had broken up with Douglas. They had been together for about 6 months. It was not a long relationship, but it had seemed solid. They saw each other all the time, made plans, and no one saw such a sudden split coming. Jessica reacted immediately, asking if he had been unfaithful. She said it with a mix of surprise and support, as if she needed a straightforward reason to understand what happened. Madison shook her head. She said no, that Douglas was a good guy. The problem, she explained, was her. She confessed that no matter how hard she tried, she could never really get over Ryan, her first love. She explained that she was constantly comparing them, remembering moments, and replaying things from the past, and that all of it had finally poisoned the relationship. She was not crying as she spoke, but she looked uncomfortable, as if saying it out loud was finally admitting something she had been avoiding for a long time. A brief silence fell over the room, not awkward, but heavy. Then Adrian spoke up. He mentioned that he completely understood what she was feeling. He shared that when he broke up with his ex, Daniela, something similar had happened to him. According to him, you can rebuild your life, even fall in love again. But there are some people you never completely get over. You just learn to live with the memory. I do not know exactly why I felt the need to jump in. Maybe it was an automatic reaction or simply because I did not agree with that idea. I said I did not think that was a universal rule. I told them that before I was with Ava, I had dated another girl, and being completely honest, I felt absolutely nothing for her now. I did not hate her or miss her, she was just a part of my past. I said it casually, never imagining those words would carry any greater weight. Adrian let out a small laugh and commented that I was probably just trying to look good. Then, almost as a joke, he turned to Ava and asked her what she thought. I remember that moment with an uncomfortable clarity, not because I suspected what was about to happen, but because I now understand that was the exact point where it all began. Ava did not hesitate or try to soften her answer. She said she agreed with them. She added that she had not forgotten her ex either. At that moment, I felt a slight tension in my body, like a warning bell. Adrian laughed nervously and told her not to say that it could sound bad and that I might get upset. He tried to downplay it, as if turning it into an awkward joke would be enough. But Ava did not stop. She explained that she had been incredibly happy with him, that what she felt was something intense, something difficult to replicate. She stated that she believed she would always love him. Then, noticing I was looking at her, she added that she loved me too, but that it was not the same. She did not raise her voice or seem angry. That was what struck me the most. She said it with a disconcerting calm, as if she were pointing out an obvious truth that needed no further explanation. I did not react right away. I just sat there, trying to process what I had just heard. I looked at the others, waiting for someone to say something, anything to restore balance to the situation, but no one spoke. Madison looked down at her hands. Jessica avoided my gaze. Adrian just looked uncomfortable, like he wished he could disappear. I felt a sense of disbelief, but also shame. Not just because of what Ava was saying, but because of where and how she was saying it. This was not a private conversation or an intimate confession. It was a public declaration, made in front of everyone, without any filter. Trying to keep my voice steady, I asked her if she missed him so much, why did she not just go find him? I did not yell or say it with sarcasm. It was a direct question, born more from confusion than anger. The silence that followed was absolute. No one moved. The movie continued playing in the background, but its sound seemed distant, irrelevant. Ava looked at me with annoyance and told me not to exaggerate, not to be so dramatic. She insisted she was just being honest and did not see why she should have to pretend otherwise. And then, without lowering her voice or showing a hint of doubt or regret, she said something that still echoes in my head. My ex is my soulmate. He always will be. You need to just accept your second place. After what Ava said, the room fell into a dead silence. No one knew how to react. It was as if the air had suddenly turned to lead. Everyone stared at some random point in the room, avoiding eye contact, fidgeting with their hands. It was not just awkwardness. It was a heavy, almost suffocating feeling, like when something is said that should never have been spoken aloud. Adrian was the first one to try to salvage the situation. He spoke carefully, measuring each word as if trying to put out a fire with a spray bottle. Ava, I think you might have crossed a line there, he finally said. He did not sound angry or accusatory. It was more of an obvious, almost weary observation. He seemed more concerned about the atmosphere in the room than the actual content of her words. But Ava showed no remorse. She did not apologize, did not even flinch. She just settled back into the couch, crossed her arms, and replied calmly. It's the truth. I'm not going to hide it. And it's funny we're talking about this now, because I've actually been missing him a lot lately. She paused for a moment, as if collecting her thoughts, and continued without looking at anyone in particular. I'm happy with Liam, but Christmases were always better with my ex. For starters, we traveled. We'd get out of the city, explore new places. Liam doesn't give me trips. He just wants to do the whole family thing in the suburbs, and it's so boring. I felt each sentence piling on top of the last, building a weight that was becoming impossible to ignore. This was not just an innocent comparison. It was a public performance review of my worth. Don't pretend. You guys know my ex made me happier, she added. The silence returned, but this time it was not just tense. There was something more uncomfortable in it, as if some of them agreed and just did not want to admit it. Jessica spoke up next, with a tone that tried to sound neutral. Well, to be fair, he was really thoughtful. Definitely more of a planner than Liam. She did not say it with obvious malice, but she did not try to soften the blow either. It was direct, without any sugarcoating. Adrian looked at her, surprised. Yeah, we all know that, he intervened. But I don't see why we need to say it like that. It's just cruel. Now his voice had a hint of annoyance. It was not a defense of our relationship. It was something more fundamental. You just do not cross certain lines in front of people. Ava let out a short, dry laugh. Sorry, I'm just saying what I feel, no filter. I don't like being a hypocrite. Then she looked straight at me. I could not read her expression. But relax, Liam, she added. I've gotten kind of used to you by now. It was not a joke. There was no irony. She said it with the same casualness someone might use to accept a leaky faucet or a noisy neighbor. At that moment, what I felt was crystal clear, total disbelief. It was not explosive anger or the urge to scream. It was a profound sense of looking at a complete stranger, as if the person sitting in front of me was not the same one I had spent the last 2 years with. I took a deep breath before I spoke. I was determined not to lose control. "So, what you miss is your ex's money, not your ex," I finally said. "I didn't realize you boiled everything down to who can buy you more gifts." My voice came out steadier than I expected. It was not an impulsive jab. It was a conclusion that had formed on its own as I listened to her. Ava sighed, as if I were oversimplifying something obvious. "It's not just the money. The truth is, he was better at everything." She adjusted her position on the couch and continued, as if she was now committed to laying it all out. "He was handsome, athletic, the quarterback of the football team in high school. He had a scholarship to a Division I school. I mean, tell me, what beats that?" No one said a word. "Besides, with him, I did everything for the first time. It was my first kiss, my first trip without my parents, and, the first person I was ever with. I've never felt an excitement like that first time again." She did not need to go into detail. The weight of what she was saying was not in the description, but in the constant, relentless comparison. In that instant, something very concrete solidified inside me, a sense of finality. It was not a flare-up of anger. It was a boundary being drawn so clearly that once crossed, there was no turning back. I had heard enough. I stood up from the couch in silence. Several pairs of eyes fixed on me, but no one spoke. I picked up my coat slowly, almost automatically, as if my body was on autopilot while my mind tried to stay level. When she saw I was heading for the door, Ava spoke again. "Oh, for God's sake, don't act like such a child. I love you too. I'm just saying I'll never forget my ex. But look at us, we're together now. I'm not with him." I did not stop. I did not turn around. I did not feel there was anything left to say in that room. I left the apartment, walked down the stairs, and got to my car. I sat behind the wheel without starting the engine. I rested my forehead on the steering wheel and just stayed there for a few seconds. I did not cry in that moment. I just breathed, trying to understand how a perfectly normal night had ended up like this. I drove to the apartment we shared, or rather, the one I rented and where we lived together. The drive was a blur. I do not remember the traffic lights or the streets I took. All I remember is a constant, quiet feeling of humiliation. As I drove, Ava's words replayed over and over in my head. They were not just isolated insults. They were comparisons, devaluations, memories that had been weaponized against me. I started to review everything I had done for her, not out of resentment, but as an unavoidable mental audit. She did not have a steady income. She painted murals whenever a freelance project came up. I always respected that. I never pressured her to find something more stable. I never held the uncertainty against her. I paid the rent, the utilities, and the majority of our expenses. I had even helped her with several of her debts, the car payment, the balance on her art supply store credit card that had piled up. I was covering all of it. I did it because I believed in us, because I thought we were a team. And now, after all of that, I was the boring one, the one who did not travel, the one who could not compete with an idealized memory. When I got to the apartment, I closed the door behind me and left my keys on the table. I sat on the couch, and right then, it all came crashing down. I cried. It was not a loud or dramatic cry. It was silent, leaning forward on the couch, as if the weight I felt was a physical thing pressing down on my back. As I was sitting there, staring at nothing, my phone vibrated. It was a text from Ava. "Can't believe you just walked out. You totally killed the vibe for everyone. I'm just gonna crash here. Call me when you're done with your little drama." I read those lines slowly, several times, as if rereading them might change their meaning. I did not reply. I turned off my phone and left it face down on the table. I just sat there in the quiet, trying to understand at what point I had gone from being her partner to becoming, in her own words, someone destined to permanently occupy second place. That thought cut deeper than any insult. I kept crying until I fell asleep right there on the couch. At first, it was a contained, weary cry, as if my body did not have the energy left to hold anything in. I stayed there, fully dressed, without turning off the lights. At some point, without realizing it, exhaustion took over. I woke with a jolt at 3 a.m. My heart was pounding, my breathing was shallow, and my shirt was soaked in sweat. I sat up immediately, my hand on my chest, convinced for a few seconds that I was having a heart attack. It took me a moment to realize it was not a medical emergency or a specific nightmare. It was anxiety, a clear, intense feeling of being on high alert. I sat there in the dark, breathing slowly, looking around the silent living room. The apartment felt different, bigger, emptier, as if it were no longer the same place. And it was there, in the silence of the early morning, that I understood it with a clarity I had not had before. I had to leave not just Ava, but everything that environment represented, that group, that dynamic, that version of myself that had spent so long trying to fit into a space where I was no longer respected. I realized something else, too, something I had ignored until then. I was only living in this city for her. This apartment, this town, these repetitive weekends, none of it was really mine. I had stayed because Ava was here, and this was not a new issue. I had suggested many times that she move to my hometown with me. It was a much larger city, with a more vibrant art scene and far more opportunities for someone who painted murals. I always told her sincerely, convinced she could build a real career there, but she never wanted to. There was always an excuse to put it off. It was not the right time. Not yet. Something might come up here. I always accepted it without much of a fight. I adapted. I stayed. Now, sitting in the dark, I understood that it no longer made any sense. I could leave. I worked remotely as a video editor. I did not have a fixed office or rigid hours. My job was not tied to any specific city. I could work from anywhere. The only things holding me back were habit and emotional attachment. I got up carefully, as if any sudden movement might shatter the fragile balance I was barely maintaining. I went to the bedroom, turned on the light, and opened the closet. I looked at my things with a strange sense of detachment, as if they no longer belonged to me. I did not feel nostalgia. I felt an urgent need to get out. I did not pack large suitcases. I did not want to give myself time to second-guess my decision. I took only the essentials: clothes, my laptop and hard drives, important documents, chargers, and some basic toiletries. I left behind furniture, decorations, and memories that once held a shared meaning. I did not want to stop to decide what was worth saving. The only thing that mattered was leaving. I loaded everything into my car in silence. Each bag I placed in the back seat gave me a strange sensation. It was not happiness, but it was not pure sadness either. It was determination. Before leaving the city limits, I stopped at a gas station. I got out and started pumping gas without thinking about the price or the exact amount. I just watched the numbers on the pump climb while its steady hum filled the air. Everything felt surreal, like I was moving on autopilot. I got back in the car, started the engine, and without overthinking it, I decided to call my mother. I was not sure what I was going to say. I wanted to sound calm, mature, in control. When she answered, I took a deep breath. "Hey, Mom. I'm coming home. I'm on my way now. There was a problem with Ava. We broke up. I think I need to be home for a little while." I tried to keep my voice from shaking. I wanted it to sound like a practical, well-reasoned decision. My mother was quiet for a few seconds. Then she replied with that gentle but firm tone she has always had. "Of course, sweetheart. You always have a home here. But tell me, are you okay?" That one question was all it took for everything to break. I could not keep up the facade. I felt a lump form in my throat, and suddenly everything I had been holding back came pouring out. I cried like I had not cried since I was a little kid. A deep, messy, uncontrolled sob. I felt small, vulnerable, completely exposed. I told her everything Ava had said, how she had compared me in front of everyone, how she had reduced me to a second-rate version, how I had been financially supporting the relationship without ever using it as leverage, and how I was still treated as someone replaceable. My mother listened without interrupting. She did not minimize my feelings or rush me. When I finished, she spoke with a clarity that left no room for doubt. "You forget about that woman. Nobody who loves you humiliates you like that. Nobody who respects you puts you in second place. You are safe here. Just come home." We said our goodbyes and I hung up. I stared at the dark screen of my phone for a few seconds. My eyes were swollen and my face felt hot. I wiped my tears with the sleeve of my jacket and started driving. The drive was long and quiet. Gradually, the sky began to lighten. The deep black of night gave way to a gray, dull dawn, which felt very much like how I felt inside. I did not turn on any music. I wanted no distractions. I just drove. I thought about a lot of things, but not about Ava in the way I would have expected. I did not idealize her or miss her. What I felt was disappointment and a profound exhaustion, as if something had broken so definitively that it no longer hurt with the same intensity. When I arrived at my parents' house, it was 7 in the morning. I parked in front of the house and stared for a few seconds at the familiar building I had known my entire life. I was back. That first day, Ava did not call or text. I did not know if she was angry, if she assumed I would come back on my own, or if she was waiting for me to make the first move. Honestly, I did not much care. I was exhausted, not just physically, but mentally. It felt like I had stepped out of a room filled with constant noise and into complete silence. It was not until the evening of the next day that my phone finally rang. It was Ava. I stared at her name on the screen for a few seconds before answering. I did not feel nervous or hopeful, just a sense that I needed to close a chapter that was, deep down, already finished. As soon as I answered, she said, "Are you not planning on coming back? It's been a while, and I haven't seen you." She did not ask if I was okay. She did not ask where I was. She spoke as if my absence was just a temper tantrum that would eventually pass. "I'm not coming back," I answered calmly. "I'm not even in the city anymore. Don't look for me. We're done." There was a short silence on the other end of the line. It was not dramatic or long. It seemed more like surprise than pain. I heard her start to say something else, but I did not give her the chance. I hung up. I felt no guilt, no immediate relief. What I felt was finality. After that, I blocked her number. I removed her from social media, from messaging apps, from any platform she could use to contact me. It was not an act of anger. It was a preemptive measure. I knew that any further conversation would only serve to reopen a wound that was just beginning to heal. The following days were strange, but not because I missed her. The strangeness came from the silence, which soon began to be filled with other voices. First came a text from one of the friends, then another, then several more. Some were long, others were direct and harsh. They called me a coward, less of a man, immature. They said I had overreacted, that I could not handle a real conversation, that Ava was a mess because of me, that leaving like that was irresponsible. I read every single message. I did not reply to any of them. What struck me the most was not what they said, but the tone. There were no questions. No one wanted to hear my side of the story. There was no interest in understanding what had happened that night. There were only judgments, all built on the same premise. I was supposed to stay, be quiet, and take it. In that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that leaving had been the right decision. That group was never truly my own. Not necessarily because they were bad people, but because their loyalties had been established from the start. I fit in only as long as I played a specific role, the boyfriend who did not cause trouble, the one who did not rock the boat. Days passed, then a week, then another. I started to rebuild small routines. I worked with more focus. I went for walks around my old neighborhood. I started sleeping better. Thoughts of Ava would occasionally surface, but they no longer carried the same sting. It was more of a memory than an open wound. 2 weeks after I left, something unexpected happened. I was in my room working on my computer when my mother came in, looking a bit flustered. She had her phone in her hand and an expression that was a mix of surprise and a suppressed laugh. "Look at this, honey," she said. "Your aunt just sent this to me." She showed me a video. It was Ava. The video was on TikTok. She was sitting in front of the camera with a serious face and visibly teary eyes. The lighting was carefully arranged. The framing was perfect. It did not look spontaneous. In the video, she claimed her boyfriend had abandoned her overnight, that he had left her alone with debts she now had no idea how to pay, that she felt betrayed and confused, and that she did not understand how someone could just leave like that. Then, looking directly into the camera, she asked if it was possible to sue me. She asked her followers for advice because she did not know what to do. She never mentioned the party. She never mentioned what she had said, the comparisons, the humiliation, or the second place. The story was expertly edited to frame her as the victim. But what surprised me the most was not the video itself. It was the comments. There were hundreds of them. Many said things like, "Is getting a job not an option? They're your debts, not his. You can't sue someone for a breakup. Did he abandon you? Or did he escape after you humiliated him?" Not all of them were critical, but the vast majority did not offer the support she seemed to be expecting. Her narrative was not landing the way she had imagined. My mother let out a short laugh. "Honestly, some people have no self-awareness." "The nerve," she commented. I did not laugh right away. I just kept staring at the screen for a few more seconds. I did not feel anger, nor did I feel satisfaction. I felt clarity. I understood something fundamental. Ava was not devastated about losing me. She was upset about losing her stability, about losing the person who solved her problems, about losing the structure that allowed her to avoid taking responsibility for her own life. And I also understood something about myself. I did not leave because I could not handle it. I left because I understood that staying would have meant accepting a permanent second place. It would have meant normalizing the comparisons, the humiliation, and the contempt, all in the name of a supposed love. Leaving was not running away, it was setting a boundary. Sometimes, walking away is the most mature thing a person can do. With that thought, I closed that chapter of my life, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had finally chosen to respect myself. Comment. I hope this story gives you a moment to reflect on your own peace. True strength often lies in the quiet decision to protect your self-respect. Choosing to walk away from a place where you are not valued is not a failure. It is a profound act of kindness to yourself. Setting boundaries is how you teach others the way you deserve to be treated. It is about taking responsibility for your own happiness and refusing to settle for being a second choice. Remember that healthy relationships should feel like a safe harbor rather than a constant battleground. Healing is a personal journey, so be patient and gentle with your heart. Your worth is inherent and never needs to be proven or negotiated. You deserve to be seen, heard, and respected for exactly who you are. Thank you for being part of this thoughtful community. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.